direction.
We must stop this terrorism. If elected, I vow to increase funding for the war on Christmas.
Oh, golly, we go live now to Santa's trial.
Doesn't Santa have a right to trial by his peers? What do these degenerate DC urbanites have in common with jolly old Saint Nick?
Christopher Kringle, if that is your real name.
Oh, it is. My question for you is whether you still remember the name Julia Markinov.
Huh? What? I don't know what you're talking about.
You dated for 6 months.
I don't remember.
Maybe you should check twice.
Case dismissed! Case dismissed! We will not be pursuing charges against one Chris Kringle. Merry Christmas!
What the hell is going on here? We are not letting this lunatic go! He's guilty, and the state is pressing charges!
Guilty? Me? Oh no.
Oh, what's that? Your naughty list?
Oh, no. In fact, some might say it's your naughty list, Mr. District Attorney.
You don't scare me!
Well, you certainly scare me. A man with this kind of browser history, deciding the fate of thousands?
That's impossible!
Nothing's impossible with a little Christmas magic.
We're dropping all charges! We will not prosecute this man!
I'm afraid that won't be enough. You're sick men, both of you, and Santa wants to help you get better. Santa wants to help all of you get better. The FBI may have destroyed all the evidence on that little island,
That's enough, take him out.
but I see you while you're sleeping.
What the?
And I know when you're awake. Santa can move very quickly, and so can his little helpers. This town has many secrets, but not as many as it thinks it does, because somebody has been watching all along, and the things he's seen have made it very difficult for him to remain jolly.
We find him guilty of subversion. We find him guilty of crimes against the people. We find him guilty of betraying the party. Guilty.
You are listening to This Week in Clown World with Ben and Hobbs, so sit back, relax, take your black pill, and enjoy the show.
Good news, everyone! It's time once again for This Week in Clown World with your hosts, Ben and Hobbs. He's Ben, I'm Dr. Hubert Farnsworth.
That was the new Freedom Tunes special, in case anybody hadn't seen it and had their interest piqued by watching that. It's pretty good.
Yeah, it was. It was very, very hilarious. I love it when they get Tim Pool and Michael Knowles and all the other people in there. You know,
this week I'm speaking of what he brought up, I'm in my brand new jet, got it at a federal auction. Weird stains inside, but other than that, it's perfectly fine.
Perfectly serviceable.
Yeah, that list is coming out. I wanted to hit on that. The total flight log.
Yeah, not the flight log, the client list.
The client list, yep.
170 names are going to be released, and I think 7 of them are still going to be redacted. So really makes you wonder who those 7 are.
Well, I heard some of them were people, they made the case to the judge that they were on there because they were being trafficked or something, so they didn't so they didn't want their name being out there. So I guess the judge agreed and took him off. But yeah, that'd be interesting to see who's on there.
Yeah, potential victims probably
Yeah,
shouldn't be
the
unmasked.
flight log I brought up is already out there, and you can see who. I mean, that's the one that had Bill Clinton, Bill Gates, Bobby Kennedy Jr. was on there, which is disappointing.
Yeah.
But I guess he's probably just making sure those girls weren't vaxxed or something. I think I heard that joke made.
Oh, yeah, his priorities, right?
What else? I mean, what else happened this week? I mean, we got the whole Colorado thing.
Yeah, over there, your neighbors. Well, what's going on over there? You like peek over your fence, what the fuck they doing over there?
Somebody sent me a picture, the sign for "Welcome to Colorado" on the Highway 71 south of here. Somebody posted a big old poster on it. It says "FUCO Trump 2024" is on the "Welcome to Colorado" sign.
Ah, yes. Well, that's the kind of rise that they're trying to get, I think, because it's, they're opening up a can of worms with the taking Trump off the ballot thing because he's not been convicted of insurrection. Well, okay, so first let's back up. First off, the insurrection clause, it clearly spells out that it applies to officers, former officers of the United States. So it was very narrowly worded for defectors to the Confederacy or defectors to an enemy state. So that's item number one. It doesn't apply to Trump because he's not a former officer of the United States. He was a former president. He's an elected official. The other things is that he's never been convicted of an insurrection. He's never even been charged or indicted for an insurrection. So to say that he's taken off for an insurrection is not going to stand up in court unless the standard that we have now is a conviction in the court of public opinion in highly biased media. In which case, all you'd have to do is have Fox News accuse Joe Biden of treason for the $6 billion that he unfroze for Iran, for the handling of the border, allowing terrorists and God knows who else to come in. You could get him for the bribery that he's gotten from every country in the world that doesn't exactly mean this country any good. I mean, there's all sorts of things that you can accuse Joe Biden of, and if that's the standard now, then you can just take him off the ballot too.
I mean, that's the big point. He's just been accused of it. He hasn't been tried of anything.
Yeah.
And why not? Let's take the one last institution of government that people have some, respect for, and let's just get rid of that. Let's just go ahead and trash the legislative branch too. I mean, why not?
Yeah, it's insane what they're trying to do. The Supreme Court of Colorado, to show just how not serious that they are about this. It was I think all 7 of them were appointed by Democrats, but they still made their ruling in a 4-3 split. So that's item number 1 that should tell you that, at least
the three were Democrats too.
Yeah, that right there should tell you how contentious it was. And then they immediately issued a stay on their own ruling because they knew it was going to get appealed. I've heard a lot of things being thrown around about whether or not the Supreme Court has jurisdiction over this because states are in charge of elections within their state, but it's for a federal office. So maybe the Supreme Court does. Maybe it doesn't, but this to me is the sort of thing that they need to step in on, and they need to tell the state Supreme Court that you can't just remove somebody on an accusation. And you know what? This takes me back to when they first started saying this shit after the January 6th. I just kept saying, or kept hearing insurrection over and over again. And I'm just like, the most heavily armed demographic in the United States showed up to an insurrection without a single gun among them. That doesn't constitute an insurrection in anybody's book except you guys' fever dreams.
Well, the video footage came out. I mean, there was some guys were getting rowdy, but then you had other guys who were just kind of strolling through the Capitol with Capitol Police having a chat.
Yeah.
Like the one guy stopped to tie his shoes and the cops waited for him.
And I said it shortly afterwards, and you said it too, that with all of this, they just it's the narrative framing. It's insurrection, insurrection are going to drive that home so that that word is in the front of people's minds, because words have meaning, especially when you're talking in a legalistic sense. You have to choose your words very carefully. So if you're accusing somebody of an insurrection, there's a very specific set of circumstances that you have to have in order to actually to be an insurrection. But they're throwing this word around, and I'm just like, they're priming people's brains for something that they're going to try to get to stick legally.
Yeah.
And here we are.
Yeah, well, and there's like 14 states that are looking to kick him off the ballot. So I'm sure if
jumped on it.
I mean, you made a good point. I mean, if the Supreme Court says, well, the states control who goes on the ballot, at that point, they're all going to try and kick him off. And that sets a precedent too. So like, what's to say Nebraska is not going to be like, oh, well, we're going to kick Joe Biden off?
I think that Dan Patrick down in Texas has already said he might have just been, a flippant.
Oh, I saw that. Yeah.
Yeah, he might just been, speaking facetiously, but yeah, he's like, oh yeah, we can kick Joe Biden off.
What kind of American are you?
Exactly. What kind of American are you?
So yeah, it'll be interesting to see. I mean, I could go either way if you ask me, because the Supreme Court is, in the past, they've been very careful about not stepping on what the states do, and the states set that process. So I mean, it could happen. I mean, libertarians have been kicked off the ballot for a couple decades now for bullshit reasons. So if it just gets weaponized completely, and one party, I mean, the two parties have worked together to keep them off. But if you have one party decide, all right, well, we're just going to kick the other one off, it could certainly happen.
Absolutely.
So what would be the backlash from that, you think? Is it just going to be I mean, nobody's going to accept that election.
And neither should they. Well, Colorado is a more or less blue state anyway, so the idea of a Republican winning it is, it's slim. It's not impossible, but it's really slim.
It gets worse every month. I mean, because people think that the people leaving California are red state refugees, but no, people leaving California are middle of the road potato heads that would vote for Biden.
Yeah. Yeah, depends on where you go. I mean, there's a lot of red state refugees that are going to places like Idaho, Tennessee, Florida, but when you're talking about places like Colorado, Oregon, and whatnot, you're getting just more of the same. The influx. It's like a plague of locusts.
Right.
Consume all of the resources in one area and then move to the next area, not realizing that you're the reason the previous area collapsed. But yeah, the backlash of it is that if the Supreme Court either doesn't step in or rules that the states control their own elections, then nobody on the right is going to accept the outcome of the election, because even with a write-in campaign, not an accusation, but a being disqualified on the grounds of an insurrection means that even if you won a write-in campaign by a landslide, those votes still don't count.
Well, Jared put up a good comment over here. The 4 justices who said I were Ivy League graduates, the 3 dissenters were from local colleges, and I saw that brought up too. I mean, we got that Ivy League brainwashing going on. Somebody commented on Rumble, the law they were using for this is for Confederate officers. Yeah, we brought that.
Yeah.
And it's kind of a lot of these laws, they're kind of vague, especially that one. For an amendment, it's fairly vague because, you don't think that you're going to have to call out every little freaking detail in something because it'll be weaponized. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So, and that's the case with this one.
Yeah. Somebody brought up the third clause of the 20th Amendment would be a potential loophole around this. It states something like, in the event that a presidential ticket gets elected and the person at the top of the ticket is ineligible, then the vice president takes over until such time as the president becomes eligible. And I have a feeling that what that is for is probably like a guy's 34 years old and he doesn't turn 35 until like right after inauguration day or something. So the vice president takes charge until he has his 35th birthday or something. But in this case, it would be something like, a potential Trump VP. If Trump were disqualified on the grounds of insurrection, then the VP would take over and then use the pardoning powers to annul the record, and then Trump would be, he'd be eligible again. Something like that is what I imagine that they're talking about as far as 20.
Well, and we talk about how the leftists use traditional media to communicate with each other. I don't remember which one of the chicks on The View said they have to use the law to get rid of Trump.
Mm-hmm.
So I mean that they're always showing their game plan in the primary media. I mean, she got roasted for it a bit. That's exactly what she's always calling Trump and the GOP fascists, but that's exactly what fascists would do. I saw the president of El Salvador called us out on our bullshit by saying, how can America try and promote democracy when they're doing this?
Right.
Fair point.
If America saw what America is doing right now, American troops would be parachuting into America to bring democracy back to America.
Oh yeah, if Putin started taking his opponent off the ballot, the amount of would be deafening.
Oh yeah, I saw this meme yesterday. It says, "I can't believe Putin surrounded the Kremlin with 20,000 troops and barbed wire to install himself as president after a rigged election. And then he sent in the KGB to raid his opponent's home and arrested him 4 times. Now his judges are removing the guy from the ballot. What an authoritarian."
What a shit show this country. I mean, while we're on the shit show thing, I mean, the southern border is just out of control at this point.
Yes.
Texas is just lining up jumbo jets and tossing them on there and just flying them to other states. Is that what I saw is going on now?
That's not Texas doing that. That's the federal government is doing that, and they've been doing it for a long time. They've been bringing
to sanctuary states, though.
Yeah, Texas. The thing that Texas is doing is making a grand show of removing people from Texas and then dropping them off en masse to a sanctuary city or a sanctuary state and saying, these people are your problem now. What the federal government is doing is processing people and in the dead of the night, getting them to airports, giving them like gift cards with $1,200 on them, and letting them go to, buying them a plane ticket and letting them go to wherever it is that they want to go. So they're set up to at least have a little bit of money, a little bit of walking around money, and they're going to a place of their choice. So, normally they're going to places like Chicago and New York anyways, but it's a lot different to be flying coach and stepping off with a loaded gift card with 1,200 U.S. taxpayer dollars on it than it is to be put in like the back of a C-17 Globemaster and kicked out on the tarmac at JFK International and been like, you're their problem now. Give them hell.
Speaking of JFK, did you see in New York, the head of the NAACP, how she just kind of snapped at they had like a conference. Did you see that?
No, I didn't.
She's a black woman, and she just snapped on migrants. She was talking, and she made fair points on all of them. She called them savages. Said these illegal migrants are coming in and they're raping, they're raping and breaking into houses. She said there's black people out on the streets and they don't get any of the money that's going to these migrants. They're not taking care of the minorities that are already there. And here comes these migrants in and they're just getting, shelter, money. And she just went off on it. Of course, she was fired. But I mean, if you could see a crack forming there, I mean, that just shows how do you think it is on the streets for a black person in New York?
This is going to be like the inside of a prison where you have like the Nation of Islam and the Aryan Brotherhood and the Latin Kings, and they're all going to get into their little ethnic corners and start shivving each other, because all the sides are being played against each other by the people at the top who are using them basically as biological weapons against each other.
Geez, maybe that's the movie idea they missed out on. They should have went for a nationwide race war. Might have not been as popular, but I mean that's seeming fairly realistic at this point too. But it's going to be blacks and Hispanics versus each other to get most favored minority status back. We're gonna have Hunger Games for minorities.
Oh yeah, that's probably why the NAACP lady got fired, was because somebody pulled her aside and been like, it's the NAACP, it's the National Association for the Advancement of Colored People. Hispanics are people of color too. Don't you know that Whitey's the enemy?
Yeah. Yeah, well, Whitey's the enemy if they're have a D by their name. Apparently, you got to keep that most favored minority status, which the Jewish people found out about. But the thing is, a lot of the Jewish people had power and money to push back on it.
Mm-hmm.
They pulled their funding from these colleges, but blacks don't have that luxury at this point in our society to. I mean, the only thing they can pull for power is to quit voting for Democrats, but who knows if they'll do that.
Somebody did the math on it, and you don't need them to vote as a solid block against the Democrats. All it takes is like 15% to leave the plantation, so to speak.
Mm-hmm. I mean, they got to do something. I mean, nothing's going their way at this point. They're starting to realize how much better they off were under Trump.
I think there's a word for doing the same thing over and over
and
over again and expecting a different result.
But I'm not even I'm willing to accept that there's election fraud. I'm not even convinced that all the minorities voted for Biden. It's just they knew which groups wouldn't come out to vote, so there might have been some ballot fuckery going on.
It's funny that you should mention the people who didn't come out to vote. In the last election, the demographics were actually kind of atypical to what you would normally suspect. Trump gained amongst blacks and Hispanics between 2016 and 2020, and he actually lost amongst white men. It wasn't very much, but he lost a little bit of support amongst white men, and I, for one, don't know what that is all about. But if polling can be believed this time around, he's gained even more favor amongst blacks and Hispanics and other minorities, and has stayed about level with the white demographics. Nationally, he and Biden are about neck and neck, but the one that makes everybody kind of stand up and pay attention is that amongst people who did not vote in 2020, Trump is leading Biden by 40 points. So when you have to ask, if things are finally getting to the point where they're bad enough that people who normally wouldn't vote get out and vote, there's your winning block, right?
I think it's gonna be a spicy election. I think this is gonna be the first time. Here's my prediction right now: the first time that nobody gets enough electoral college votes.
Really?
Yeah.
Think they're going to throw it to the House?
I think we're going to get an independent in there who's going to get enough votes, because Biden is such a dumpster fire. This is if they don't get rid of Biden. He's such a dumpster fire, and there's enough people that just can't bring themselves to vote for Trump. And I saw Manchin went to New Hampshire. Why is Manchin doing a tour of New Hampshire right now? You get something like a Bobby Kennedy Manchin ticket. I mean, that'll get a lot of votes.
Yes,
the Libertarian, one of their best tickets they had was Johnson and Weld, and they got almost 4%. That amount in this upcoming election by 2 or 3 different candidates. Oof.
You have the No Labels Party, or the No Labels movement, or whatever you want to call it. They're making some waves, but I don't think they're making enough. It's the one that you have to watch out for is Bobby Kennedy. And I think that he's going to end up hurting Biden more than he hurts Trump.
Yeah, because those people that didn't vote, you said that'll be the ones that'll probably end up picking Kennedy over Biden. I don't think those people will, they won't throw behind Trump as much. Trump has that rabid base.
Yep.
The GOP's kind of grown to accept him. But I mean, so many people are just soured on Democrats with Biden, and he's completely fucked up this whole Israel Muslim thing. It's like 1 week he's who. I mean, just pick a side. At least you'll get them. Instead, he's managed to piss off both sides completely.
Yeah. Yeah. You can't. There is no winning in that by trying to play the middle, being a fence sitter. So you have to accept that you got to swing one direction or the other, and the other side is going to be mad. But you try to play the middle, and both sides are going to be mad.
And I don't know. I can't imagine the Muslim vote is that big in the States. It can't be more than the Israeli vote or the Jewish vote, but the Jewish vote has money.
Yeah. It's not so much, I think, that it's the size of the vote as much as it is where that vote is concentrated, which is mostly around Michigan. And
Minnesota and Michigan, yeah.
Yeah, and also the outsized volume of that demographic, as well as the people who have a sort of like xenophilia, where if it didn't come from here, then it's automatically better. The types of people that see everything through the oppressor-oppressed matrix, who, if they're an oppressed class, then you automatically have to side with the underdog or whatever.
Well, that changes my thought then, where I knew that, but I didn't think of it till you said. I mean, they're concentrated in 2 purple states, so I mean, their votes could swing those 2 states.
Yeah.
So
it's not like their diaspora is evenly spread out throughout the United States. There's a few like solidly concentrated pockets in a couple of battleground swing states.
And Jews are spread out quite a bit, relatively speaking, so they probably don't have enough to swing, but like I said, they've got money to swing votes. So
they've got money and they've got volume,
and they're single issue. They could care less about everything, a lot of things, as long as it supports Israel.
Yep.
And the GOP seems to have that going for them at this point.
Yeah, they got that Israel lobby pretty much locked down for whatever reason, except for the big donors. Like the individual donor class seem to throw money at the Democrats. It's a weird dynamic.
Well, and I saw there was some more fallout from the Harvard stuff. Jewish donors continue to pull money. The what was her last name? Gay. They started digging into her history a little more, and apparently she just plagiarizes left and right. 40 incidences of plagiarism, when one gets you on academic suspension at Harvard, and she had 40.
Well, imagine that you're a hiring director or however she got into her position, and here comes a black lesbian woman whose last name is Gay.
Hired.
Yeah, you got to be like, oh man, we're gonna hit 3 of our demographic DEI score points on this one person alone. Fuck it, can you start tomorrow? Yeah. I'll clean out my own desk. Welcome aboard.
So I'm guessing she'll be out eventually, because money talks, and they can't just say it was the money at this point. They can say, oh well, turns out she's a liar and can't write a research paper, so hit the road, bitch.
Liar and a plagiarist and a communist and probably some other things too.
All the good stuff. So yeah, we'll see how that all plays out. But that was my prediction. I think we're gonna have the first time, and then we'll end up with some sort of coalition mess.
Well, not really, because once it goes to the House, then each state has 1 vote to cast, and there's more Republican-controlled states than there are Democrat states. So we'll have a Republican president if it goes to the House, unless you have some serious turncoats. But I don't see that happening.
Yeah, a lot of the states passed after the whole Ron Paul incident. A lot of states passed, so they have captured electors, which is not how it's supposed to work. I think it's bullshit. I mean, Nebraska is one of them. that does that. You have to vote with, but it's a misdemeanor, so who cares? If it costs you a misdemeanor to do what you want, if you're an elector, go for it.
Yeah, punishable by fine means legal for a price.
Yeah, so I mean, that kind of, speaking of new governments, I mean, Simon's not here, but you want to hit on Argentina?
Oh, Simon's not here. I actually I don't really know. I sent him the link. I don't know what he wanted to talk about. He sent me a link, but it was in Spanish, and for whatever reason, it didn't have the little translate button on the bottom, so I had no idea what it was about. And he called me on my way home tonight, and he's like, "Oh well, we'll talk about it tonight." But it looks like he might have gone to bed. Maybe.
Well, I don't know when that guy sleeps. So if he fell asleep, that's amazing.
Yeah, he
But
said he was up at like 3:30 this morning watching some press conference from the WHO. I'm just like,
well, and props to Simon. He turned me on to following Lloyd Austin news. And I told you, I was like, this dude is, I think he's the president.
yeah.
He pops up in the Middle East to give a hoorah talk on a carrier and meet with Middle Eastern leaders. The dude's all over the place.
What else have you noticed that has you thinking that?
Just the fact that, I mean, leaders of other countries meet with him more than any, and I think it's on purpose. I don't think they want leaders of other countries talking to Biden.
Oh yeah.
I think he is the man. And, just the fact that he kind of has a pedigree too. And he seems smart enough that when he's in there as sec def, I bet he brings in people. There's people in there that he can trust. I think, and I looked at some of the appointments around him, and they're from people that, former military people. I think he is the shadow president at this point. And he seems smart enough. You don't get to be I can't remember how many stars he was, but you don't get to be that point in the military without being able to play politics. It's all politics at that point.
Yeah, once you get up past lieutenant colonel or colonel, you cease being a military man and you become a politician.
Mm-hmm. And just when you hear him speak too, I mean, he's not you can tell it's not from a teleprompter, obviously. He knows his shit. He knows all the ins and out of everything he's talking on. So, I think he's the man.
He's got a good presence too, and he's got that like kind of deep, booming voice that's not quite James Earl Jones, but it's close enough to get that sort of feeling.
He doesn't move around like a Roomba. That's the best thing I've heard about. Biden moves like a Roomba.
Oh yeah, God, he did it again. He finished giving his speech, and then he turned around, and he's like got his back to the camera. He's facing the rear of the stage. And he sees hands go up because he doesn't know where he's at. And he turns left and he turns right. And he kind of goes over to the left a little bit and he stops.
I know.
And he kind of goes over to the right a little bit. And a Secret Service agent peeks around the corner of the stage curtain and looks right at him. And he looks at the Secret Service agent guy. And then he turns left and he goes a couple steps to the left again. And he's like, oh, maybe I should go over to the agent. And he goes and walks over to the agent. It's like,
like once you hear that, he moves like a Roomba. You can't unsee it. Anytime he's out there, he's just couple steps turn. That Secret Service agent is probably waving an ice cream bar, an ice cream sandwich, trying to get him to come the right direction.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think that's the man that's actually running stuff. And if Biden gets elected again, he's cemented in there. I think that's who your president actually is, which good or bad, I don't know.
Yeah, he's a Raytheon guy.
Yeah,
he's given a lot of speeches that would be right at home on George W. Bush's desk in early 2002. He seems like he's less of a Democrat than he is as an early 2000s Toby Keith Republican.
Yeah. But I don't know. I can't imagine Biden wins again, but who knows at this point? Then that'd be your man.
I can't imagine Biden finishes out this term.
Oh,
way
really? You think he's
oh
declining that fast?
with the way that you see him, he can't get through a speech without bumble fucking something up. He doesn't know where he is. He doesn't know where he's going. He has to have Secret Service agents come into frame, which is something I guess they're not supposed to do.
Right. I can't think I've ever seen Secret Service, peeking out and saying stuff to a president except for this term.
Yeah, it's something like Bongino said it today. He's like, it's not like a rule. You're not going to be reprimanded if you happen to get into frame, but it's just like one of those things that you're just not supposed
Like,
to
remember
do.
when George Bush couldn't get off the stage through the curtain? Do you remember that? Nobody even came out during that, but they're popping in all the time for Biden.
Yeah, it's because he's not there. He's not the president. He's not in charge of anything. And I think that between his rapid declining mental health and between all of the legal stuff that's coming up between him and his son, he is, like I said, he's going to pardon himself, pardon his family, and resign. And that's going to be the in that they use. Now, whether or not they slot Kamala Harris from VP to P, or if they hold out long enough for the DNC.
Well, I think you hit it there. It'll be a contested convention. I don't think they'll even bother with slotting. I think they'll just let Biden. Everything's set up at this point. They'll just let Biden do his thing. Mm-hmm. And they'll have something come up before the DNC convention, and then they'll just have a contested convention where they put. That's probably a GOP or Democrat Party wet dream, is to be able to pick your own guy at a convention instead of having to deal with all this voting.
They are going to make it seem like a contested convention.
Oh, sure. Yeah.
It's going to be theater. Their choice has already been made.
They have all those super delegates. So
right. Exactly. And the Lloyd Austin stuff.
He's still in there.
It's starting to seem a little more and more likely. Although if he's the guy running the show right now, why would he risk putting himself to the front of the pack? I still think that there's room to parachute Michelle Obama in as the reluctant 11th hour candidate. Like, oh, the super delegates have drafted Michelle Obama, and she'll come up on stage and be like, oh, please, I did not want this, but you want me to do it, so I will serve my country and blah blah. It's like, yeah, you were wrangling behind the scenes the whole time, you mannish bitch.
Now, I don't know if those 40% that didn't vote you talked about would get behind a Michelle Obama over a Lloyd Austin, though.
No, but the secret ingredient is crime.
Yeah. Back to the Argentina news that I wanted to hit on. You hadn't seen any stories about it?
No, other than Milei is like taking his chainsaw to the bureaucracy.
Well, I don't remember if it was last week or a couple weeks ago where I said my Norwegian friend realized that there's two different types of news. So the two, I saw this for Milei, the one news story said Milei makes protesting illegal in wake of sweeping changes. Well, no, he didn't make it illegal. He said, if you're going to protest and you get arrested, you're going to lose your government assistance. Fair.
Okay, yeah, you're biting the hand that feeds you.
Yeah, you're biting the dick you're sucking. Don't protest then. And and I saw pictures of their protests. It seemed like they took that to heart. They were very peaceful. They had assembled, but they weren't burning anything because they probably didn't want to lose their government cheese.
Yeah, and that's the wording there that is important. Not if you protest, you will get arrested and lose your government assistance. If you protest and you do something that gets you arrested, like burn a cop car or assault somebody or something, then you're going to get arrested and lose your
that's amazing. Why couldn't we do that here? Sure, go ahead and do your protest, but if you're gonna do something to get arrested, you'll lose your government cheese. Go ahead.
Well, we just kind of cut to the chase and allow them to fuck around, find out, and the trash takes itself out.
We'll put a bunch of young Kenosans on the street and see.
There you go.
See how that works out.
The Kyle Rittenhouse solution.
Yeah, so he had 2 stacks of paper on it. I saw a picture. He had 2 stacks of paper on his desk. One side was departments he was cutting, and one side was departments he was modifying, and they were like 2 feet tall. So it looks like he's going. I mean, go big or go home at this point.
Yeah.
He has to get him on. I'm sure the deep state's trying to figure out how to counter this guy, so he might as well just. That's what Trump should have done. That's where he fucked up. He should have just got in there and started wrecking shit.
Right. I think that the people in the deep state, both ours here and the ones that run places like Argentina, are probably so detached from reality, so far up their own ass, that they see such radical changes in that direction as inevitably going to fail.
Mhm.
So they don't feel the need to do anything against somebody like a Javier Milei, because they like, oh, he's going to take a chainsaw to the apparatus of the state, things are going to collapse, and then a mob is going to drag him out of the presidential palace and string him up on a light post or something.
Mhm.
Give it 2 weeks and it'll collapse. And I think they'll be disappointed when such a thing doesn't come to pass. It's kind of the exact opposite of what we have going on in the Libertarian Party right now since the Mises Caucus takeover, right? There's a huge difference between thinking something is going to fail and then or getting butthurt and actively moving that failure along. And that's also where we messed up big time in Latin America during all of the socialist and communist uprisings in the 60s and 70s and 80s. Our government looked at those, and rather than realizing that they're going to fail in their own time, they said, well, yeah, we know they're going to fail, but we need to help it along a little bit faster. It's like, no, you don't. Because then not only do you get the people that you hurt pissed off at you, but then you also give those commies plausible deniability to run cover. Oh, well, that wasn't real communism. That only failed because the United States stepped in with their sanctions and their embargoes and their secret agents coming in to do wet work on our territory. They took out our politicians. They took out our policymakers. That wasn't real communism. That was interference by the bougie elite or whatever stupid excuses that they want to give themselves. And I want to go back to that time-tested and honored that old axiom that says the best way to cure people of their desire for socialism is just to give it to them.
Right.
Give it to them good and hard.
Hopefully that's not the cure for libertarianism that Malay's. I mean, he's straight up said, it's going to get worse before it gets better. He had to privatize some industries. They were propped up with subsidies. I guess a lot of the rent and fuel in Argentina is propped up by subsidies. So, people are going to have to see their daily expenses go up. But hopefully, you have that yo-yo where it'll work its way out and they'll be for the better.
Well, the wound on Argentina's economy right now is rancid and gangrenous. You can't let it fester as it is right now because you're afraid that pulling the bandage off is going to pull a few hairs out and sting a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
It is going to get worse before it gets better. It could get a lot worse before it gets better. You might have to debride the wound and flush it out, and it could sting like a son of a bitch for a while. But once you get all of the gangrenous rot of socialism and communism that's infested your economy and infested your government out, then you have the chance to heal and to build it back up and allow the natural course of things to take over.
Even if it completely goes to shit, I mean, he's doing so much that it's got to help what he's doing. So even if they take and throw him out of office, the next guy that comes in there, it's going to take them too long to set that all back up. So there'll be some healing done in their country just through how he's going about it, of just, taking a chainsaw to it. And like I said, that's what Trump should have done. He went in there and he tried to, fiddle fart around and trust the people that are in there. It seems like Milei isn't listening to the deep state that's in there, and he's just going balls to the wall to get it done. And, I kind of see it, if Trump gets in here this next time, if it looks like Milei is able to do Trump doesn't have to worry about getting a second term. I mean, he can just do whatever within his powers.
Yeah, exactly. That's why they're so terrified, and it's why they're doing what they're doing right now. And if this thing in Colorado shouldn't pan out for one reason or another, if the Supreme Court comes down and rules against it and sets the legal precedent that basically decapitates this effort in all of the other states that they're trying at, then what have they got to move on to next?
Well, he's already said when he gets in there, the first thing he's going to do is, get rid of him. Can't say that. I don't even want to bring that. The third thing he wants to do is lock down that southern border. But, people have got so used to just waltzing across that border. How do you even you would think a border of a sovereign nation, you wouldn't want to approach it with the intent of getting in without worrying about getting shot. So how do you lock it up at this point when people are so used to just wandering up and getting in? Just have massive pepper spray cannons or what?
We have the largest and most powerful military in the world, and as much as I don't want to say that a deployment of the National Guard from all 50 states along the southern border to keep people from violating the border is in order, it might be in order. And that's the sort of thing that the National Guard is for. Now, in order to
who wants to tell Joe Snuffy he has to shoot Pablo trying to get into the border, though?
Right, and that's where you would want to do something with like water cannons or physical barriers of one type or another. Now, if you'll entertain my wacky idea here,
okay.
Imagine, if you will, a public works project that puts many people to work in high-paying construction jobs, engineering jobs, in order to build along the U.S.-Mexican border a new Panama Canal. 1,200 miles of shipping lane.
I mean, you almost have to. I mean, walls have never worked. I mean, the Romans have tried walls. I mean, they built Hadrian's Wall, but that was more for tax purposes than anything. It didn't keep the Scots out.
Right.
Walls have never been. You have to have people or threats of violence to keep people out. That's the only thing that works.
Well, I mean, yeah, you don't just like plop a wall down and then just abandon it. It would have to be manned. It would have to have security cameras or something. But I think that a new shipping lane, because
I agree. That'd be great.
We built the Panama Canal and then sold it to Panama for $1. I mean, I'd say that's probably the biggest piece of philanthropy in human history right there, because they collect taxes on everything that moves through the locks, right? So if we could build another canal on the U.S.-Mexican border, we've solved southern border security, and we have a brand new trade route. And
that's a massive undertaking.
Yeah, it's like 1,200 miles, and you have to go through the Rocky Mountains.
Let's just take over Mexico down to Panama, and we'll put the new border there. Or at least to a fairly, at least down far enough to southern Mexico that we could build a cheaper canal across there.
Can you imagine a tunnel, a shipping tunnel that goes through the Rocky Mountains? It'd be like the love tunnel, only for horny sailors.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't know how you deal with that border, and that's why I'm not president at this point. I don't want to have to know how to deal with it. I mean, a large part of it's river through Texas, isn't it?
Yeah, you got the Rio Grande.
Does it run the length of Texas? Or I'm fairly ignorant on my Texas geography, I guess.
It's a decent
I
amount.
pulled up Google Maps. Yes, so I mean, you wouldn't have to. You'd have to mainly go across Arizona and then come out in San Diego, which is doable.
Yeah, the Rocky Mountains are the main geographical problem with that. You have to
Yeah.
like you'd have to construct a new Grand Canyon essentially, but even bigger.
I mean, just digging a canal to keep people out. I mean, it seems like most of the major crossing points are where they don't have to get into the water.
Hmm.
Fill it with gators. I don't know. It's such a mess. But Trump says that's his first action he's going to do is to shut that down.
Yeah.
And there was some stories about border guards are they're broken people at this point. How would you feel if your job was to secure the border and just show up every day and watch people come in?
Yeah.
I mean,
I'm like, yeah, I'm gonna go find a different job. Thanks.
yeah, I don't know how they get people to do it. I mean, they're just, and a lot of them are veterans too.
Mhm.
That's a government job to get when you get out. And they're talking. One guy was talking. He was in Iraq for multiple tours. Um, he watched people die. For what? So that for America, and the border's just wide open. So what even is America at this point if you can just walk in? He's like, what a waste of my life.
That's got to be like one of the worst feelings in the world. It's like, oh yeah, I completely wasted the best years of my life
Fighting in Iraq, then came back and took a government job to secure the border because he loves America and he's just watching it get ruined every day by people just marching across.
Right. And in other border news, they're taking people from Customs and Border Protection off of the rail lines that they're inspectors for the railway lines.
Mhm.
They're taking personnel off of railway inspection and putting them in migrant processing facilities because they need men to process all of these people that are just coming here.
Oh, great. Yeah, let's ruin international trade so we can bring in more immigrants.
Yeah. And you have to ask yourself what it's for. And a lot of people will say it's for votes. It's for a new demographic. They're going to offer amnesty. That might be one of the last things that Joe Biden does as president before he pardons himself and his family and then resigns or something, is to have some type of an amnesty scheme going. I don't know how you would do that with a recalcitrant legislature,
Yeah.
but maybe he figures he can get away with all of this other shit that he's done. Maybe he'll just be able to use his pen and executive order, 35 million people into U.S. citizenships or whatever. But I think that it's less about a reliable voting bloc, especially when you consider that a lot of Hispanics are traditional Catholics and the Democrat Party is the party of trannies and gays and stuff that Catholics tend to look down on.
Yeah.
I think it's less to do with a voting bloc and more of a Cloward and Piven style destruction of the country through government largesse. Cloward and Piven?
Yeah. I mean, that's one way to do it for sure.
Yeah. Get a bunch of people in here with low skills, low education that don't speak the language, but they still got to eat. They still got to have a roof over their head. Get them on the government dole, bankrupt the country, and watch it collapse. Same time, you're destroying the country's reputation overseas. You're getting in bed with a lot of sundry characters in places that most people can't even pinpoint on a map. You're doling out money. You are destroying the country's economy and status as the world's reserve currency. You are formulating plans for a digitalized central bank digital currency, and your healthcare system is collapsing because a lot of people did some things that they probably shouldn't have done.
Yeah. And Simon's brought up, how BRICS is, trying to get rid of the dollar. I saw, China and Saudi Arabia made a huge oil sale, and Saudi Arabia took payment in yen. So,
Yep.
I mean,
Which you're not supposed to do.
Yeah.
But who's going to hold them accountable? Is the United States going to take Saudi Arabia to the International Criminal Court or something and be like, no, all oil sales have to be made in U.S. dollars? That was part of the Bretton Woods financial agreement. No, nothing's going to happen because nothing ever does happen. They just do shit like this and people just let them get away. Hey, you're not supposed to do that. Well, I just did. What are you going to do about it?
Yeah. I mean, one apparent, we didn't talk about this, but it was on the notes. One thing, it seems like we're exporting to school shootings now. So,
oh, Jesus.
I mean, what was the story on this thing in Prague? Do they know anything about the kid yet, or was it a guy? Or
it was a history student. 15 people dead, 24 people wounded. He was a history student at that university. Another wonderful case of he was on our radar. because apparently he was posting things on his Telegram channel and other social media about how he was suicidal, how nobody liked him, how he was going to kill himself, but he's going to take a whole bunch of people out with him, and law enforcement was looking for him. They knew that he was going to do something. They were like on a kind of a not a manhunt, because it wasn't like, frantic, we got to get this guy, now, but they were, kind of, he's like on a BOLO list. And I think Simon said something about that the cops were actually, they were on campus that day, like looking for him. They're like, hey, is this guy showed up? And then that guy showed up, and he killed, almost 45 people, or killed 15 people, wounded 24, and then he killed himself before the police could get to him. So he did exactly what he said he was going to do.
Well, apparently Czech Republic does not have very strict gun laws, so
they liberalized them a few years ago.
Oh, well, great. So that'll probably go away now. Those European countries always look for,
put your tinfoil hat on.
Seems like anytime there was just a shoot, some European country had a shooting maybe last year, and they passed a bunch of gun laws because of it. Mm-hmm. Unfortunate, but if you're gonna get nutters with guns. That's just how it works.
Yep.
If I was the Czech Republic, I wouldn't get rid of my guns being in Eastern Europe.
No, and that's the big reason why they liberalized the gun laws, because they're like, hey, Russia's right there, and they have a history of doing things.
I mean, you never hear, maybe you just don't hear the news about it, but Russia seems like they might. What are Russia's gun laws? I'm not sure on those. You never hear about.
Bad. They're bad.
Oh, they are? Okay.
Yeah. They've gotten a little bit better in recent years, but they are awful. I think it's one of the laws is like nothing in a military caliber. So, like, and this is something that's actually kind of common in a lot of European countries. Like Italy has that law too. So they can't have a pistol in 9mm Luger. So if you buy a pistol in Italy, it'll be in 9x21, which is a more powerful caliber, but it's not a military and police caliber, and that's what matters.
So you get a 5.7 there, I assume.
Maybe. I don't know.
Well, because I was going to say, we never hear about shootings in Russia when they have the most depressed young men out of any country I can think of, probably, but maybe that's why.
Dmitry, do not kill people in your school. We give you guns, send you to Ukraine, kill them.
Yeah. They've got an outlet, is what you're saying.
Yeah. exactly.
Well, and we didn't even get much on Ukraine, but we're up on an hour. I mean, apparently they're still in full panic mode because they lost their funding. And the Ukraine has quit trying to move their border line, which went only maybe 100 yards. So should be wrapping up anytime now, I hope.
Well, you would hope. I think that Ukraine as a country might be coming to an end, which is something that we've predicted here.
Yeah.
Poland's going to snatch up a bit. Romania's going to snatch up a bit. Russia's going to snatch up a bit. And if there is Ukraine, it'll be a tiny little speck around Kiev.
Yeah, because you and Simon talked about it. There's going to be rebuilding funds, and I just don't think there's going to be the fervor to rebuild. I'm talking about people funding it from America. I just don't think, our infrastructure is in such shit that these inner cities aren't gonna. Who wants to take that political hit? Oh, you have money for roads in Ukraine, but I've got 16 potholes in my street. Not gonna happen.
Well, then you got the private hedge funds and equity funds like BlackRock, Vanguard, State Street that rather than funding a rebuilding effort, they might just buy up all the land.
Yeah, you make more money sending them bombs than you do sending them cement and asphalt. So yeah, I just think that country's a hot mess at this point. They've got no young men to rebuild anyways. So
but who does have a whole lot of young men, right? Who has a surplus of young men?
Romania.
China.
Oh, well, yeah. Go into debt. Bring a bunch of Chinese guys to build stuff. Why not?
Marry off all your hot Ukrainian women to some Chinese guy who's making six figures in a construction job rebuilding your war-torn country.
They got a port.
21st century imperialism right there.
Outstanding.
Economy and demographic changes. It ain't about guns and bullets and moving soldiers around in lines on the map anymore. It's all about economy and demographics and culture. Cultural exports.
That could be a prediction we'll have to check on in like 6 years, I guess. So we'll see how that one goes.
There you
go. Well, thanks for joining us, everybody. We were going to have Simon hit us up for our next week's news this week, but we'll have to get him next week. Hobbs has a show tomorrow if you want to tell everybody about that.
Yes. I about honked the horn here. So join us tomorrow. We got a Observations finally. I'm going to be talking to the Sultan of the Superfluous Umlaut, the social media guy from Kanai Pro Gear and now Rebels Raiders. If you followed Kanai back in the day before they went under, he's the guy that's responsible for all of the funny goat-themed memes. He has a new Instagram, Facebook, Twitter called Rebels Raiders. It's just how it sounds. The goat memes are still a-flowing. There's funny T-shirts and stuff on his page. It's rebelsraiders.com.
He got a couple containers of old Kanai Pro Gear stuff too. Is that sold out yet? Do you know?
Almost
sold out. Okay.
Yeah, he's got like some sling bags and the roll top bat, the Celeritas, I think is what it's called, and that's it. Everything else is sold out. So we'll talk to him tomorrow. We're going to talk.
Could be interesting if you talk to him in person at all.
No, not yet. He
comes across online as a full-blown autist, so we'll see how that goes.
Yeah, I think it'll be fun. He sent me his personal phone number and we've texted back and forth a little bit. And he texts exactly like he writes the memes with all the accent marks and umlauts and all that shit. I'm just like, okay, this is going to be great. So
it's tomorrow at 9 Central, right?
Same bat time, same bat channel.
All right, yeah. Tune in tomorrow, 9 Central. You can meet the Kanai Pro Gear meme guy, which if you're in the Goonosphere, you're well aware of Rebel and the gang there. So check us out on Roads Number 2 Liberty everywhere, Facebook, YouTube, Rumble, and on Twitter we are I always forget it.
R2L Pod on Twatter.
R2L Pod on Twatter.
Yeah.
Do you post much there? Or?
Not really. If you type in Real Roads to Liberty podcast and you look for that, if you see it down there in the corner, that symbol is the profile picture.
So look for us there too. We're not real active there, but check us out. So thanks for joining us. Tune in tomorrow, 9 Central. We'll see you then. Stay honky.